This is what President Trump had to say yesterday on what may be one of the final days of the current Iran war. All of those countries that can't get jet fuel because of the Strait of Hormuz, like the United Kingdom, which refused to get involved in the decapitation of Iran, I have a suggestion for you. Number one, buy from the U.S. We have plenty. And number two, build up some delayed courage. Go to the Strait and just take it. Tonight, he addresses the nation at 9 p.m. Most commentators think he's announcing ground troops, that we're headed into a quagmire and the end of MAGA. They're wrong. It's far more likely he announces a ceasefire and the beginning of the end of NATO, but we just don't know. I'm Barbara Boyd, and I've followed how the modern British Empire has profited off the manipulation of the oil and gas market ever since the petrodollar market was born in 1971. Today, I'm covering three things: why this war ends when Trump and his middle-aged allies say it ends, how the administration planned for this war and its energy outcome months in advance, and why the states and nations that refused drill, baby, drill are now paying the steepest price. Let's start with something Secretary of War Hegseth said at the Pentagon briefing Tuesday morning. It sets the frame.
We have more and more options, and they have less. Just 1 month in, only 1 month, we set the terms. The upcoming days will be decisive. Iran knows that, and there's almost nothing they can militarily do about it.
The war is not spinning out of control. It is being compressed toward a defined endpoint. And that endpoint is driven by one condition the press and everybody else keeps missing. The war ends when Donald Trump and America's Arab allies, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, Jordan, and Egypt, the nations at the center of the Abraham Accords, are satisfied that Iran is no longer a military danger. These Gulf states have committed trillions in new investment into our economy, the American economy. Iran has been attacking their civilian infrastructure for 32 consecutive days: aluminum plants, desalination facilities, major refineries, oil tankers sitting in their own ports. That isn't abstract. These are the nations building the new economic architecture for the world with Donald Trump, and they have a direct say of where this ends. The president said Tuesday evening he expected a resolution in 2 to 3 weeks, or earlier if Iran makes a deal.
But we're finishing the job, and I think within maybe 2 weeks, maybe a couple of days longer to do the job. But we want to knock out every single thing they have. Now, it's possible that we'll make a deal before that, because we'll hit bridges, and we've hit some. We'll hit some bridges. We've got a couple of nice bridges in mind. But if they come to the table, that'll be good.
Which brings us to the diplomatic front. While Trump was taking NATO to the woodshed and repeatedly stating we're about to leave it, his back-channel peace negotiator, Pakistan's foreign minister Ishaq Dar, was on a plane to Beijing to meet with China's Wang Yi. This was his second trip this year. They emerged with a 5-point ceasefire proposal conditioned on the Strait of Hormuz being reopened. That did not come together in a few hours of meeting. China is Iran's largest oil customer. When Beijing tells Tehran through Trump's Pakistani back channel, take the off-ramp, that message lands. At almost exactly the same moment, Iranian President Pezeshkian released this statement: "We possess the necessary will to end this conflict, provided that essential conditions are met, especially the guarantees required to prevent repetition of the aggression." Iran's president said Tehran has the will now to end this war. That is the fracture Trump has been working. And this morning, President Trump announced he is seriously considering the ceasefire. None of this is chaos. It is a precisely sequenced military and diplomatic operation with an economic endgame that was in motion long before the shooting started. And this brings us to what matters most. Now, everyone treats this war as a foreign policy crisis with economic side effects. They have it exactly backwards. This is an economic operation with military enforcement. The war is the instrument. The target is the energy order, the one that has kept the world locked in feudal dependency on British imperial finance for the better part of a century. At the cabinet meeting on March 26, Treasury Secretary Bessent laid it out.
Mr. President, national security, as you always say, is economic security. Now, the American people and the world will have absolute security. Through your maximum pressure campaign, Treasury has worked to uncover all financial lifelines through the regime and cut them off. This is something that has been contemplated for almost a year. The Iranian financial system collapsed in December. We have systematically weakened Iran's ability to fund operations and procure weapons, and that required months of preparations.
Iran's financial system collapsed 2 months before the first bomb fell because the economic war began the day Trump took office. Maximum pressure sanctions, tightened enforcement, financial strangulation. The military phase was the finishing move after negotiations failed, not the opening one. And simultaneously, the Departments of Energy, Interior, and the EPA were unleashing American energy production, drill permits, pipeline approvals, regulatory rollbacks, making the United States energy independent so that when this war came, the global energy market wouldn't collapse even if Iran shut down the Strait of Hormuz. During the war itself, Treasury dropped sanctions on Russian and Iranian oil and orchestrated an international reserve release, flooding the market with supply. That is a move armchair generals would never imagine because they don't think in economic terms. This administration does. The battle plan was in place day one, aimed at breaking the transatlantic empire's energy control system while reviving America's industrial base. And General Kane, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, said it plainly at yesterday's Pentagon briefing.
It's hands-on work where one uncaught mistake or deviation can put an American's life at risk. A single misplaced wire, a microscopic flaw in a weld, incorrectly calibrated sensor could mean the difference between mission success or mission failure. The difference is measured in the lives of our sons and daughters who we put out around the field and on the field of battle. We rely on and trust in these great Americans, and it's not just their manufacturing skill, it's their innovative minds and their entrepreneurial spirit.
The chairman of the Joint Chiefs at a wartime briefing honoring the machinists and engineers building precision munitions in American factories. That is the language of the American system, and it tells you what this administration is building. So the plan was in place. The energy independence was built. The financial war preceded the military war. But here's where it gets really concrete, because the people who refuse to go along with the plan, they're the ones suffering now. Nowhere is the collision between green ideology and physical reality more brutal than in the states and nations that dismantled their own energy production and are now paying for it in the middle of a war. Start with Europe. The UK and the European Union, under the twin myths of the green energy revolution and continued U.S. support for the Ukraine proxy war, systematically dismantled their energy sectors and their defense industrial bases. They now have the audacity to lecture us about international law while displaying all the courage of a cornered rat. Britain refused to participate in the decapitation of Iran's military threat and is now begging for jet fuel. That's what happens when you hollow out your energy supply in the name of net zero. Reality sends the bill. But you don't have to look across the Atlantic. Look at California. Gavin Newsom has spent 15 years dismantling that state's energy production. The result? Nearly $6 a gallon for gasoline, which Newsom, of course, blames on Trump. Michael Schellenberger documents the truth. California imports 63% of its crude oil from foreign countries, including the embattled Gulf states, despite sitting on 1.7 billion barrels of proven reserves. Think about that. In the middle of a war that has disrupted global supply through the Strait of Hormuz, California is dependent on foreign oil it doesn't need to import. That is not bad luck. That is policy, insane policy. And the people of California are paying for it at every pump every single day. And California isn't alone. New York, Illinois, Washington states, every blue state that adopted aggressive green mandates, blocked pipelines, banned fracking, or shut down refining capacity is now watching its residents get crushed at the pump. Now, contrast that with the states that embraced drill, baby, drill. Texas, North Dakota, Pennsylvania, New Mexico. They leaned into the president's energy agenda. Their consumers are buffered. They know the future is ahead. Their industries are expanding. They have leverage, not dependency. And their governors aren't blaming the president for a crisis they created themselves. This is the proof of concept for everything the administration has been building. The states and the nations that align with Trump's energy revolution are thriving. The ones that clung to the green fantasy are exposed, and their people are paying the price in real dollars every single day. The war didn't create this divide, it revealed it. The war is ending on a defined timeline, driven by Donald Trump and America's Gulf allies, not NATO, not the UN, and not even particularly Israel. Iran's own president has said Tehran has the will to end it. The decisive days are here. The battle plan was in place on day one, primarily economic, aimed at ending the transatlantic empire's energy control system. Iran's financial system was broken months before the first bombs fell. The energy independence was built in advance. Nothing about this was accidental or chaotic. And the states and nations that refuse to build, refuse to drill, refuse to produce, they are living proof of what happens when you bet against the American system. This has been your midweek update. Thanks for watching.